to take this opportunity to say sorry and thank you at the same time. I wanted to apologise for my absence over the last few months. I did a community post about it a while ago, but I have had a very hectic period of time, some of it good, some of it bad. But yeah, it's been a very chaotic, shall we say, period of time in my life for a number of reasons, and unfortunately these videos have had to take a little bit of a backseat for some important stuff going on in my life. But my thank you comes in response to the fact that you guys are still seemingly enjoying the videos. We still have new people joining the community. We still have people watching the videos, liking them, dropping really nice comments. So that's very, very humbling for me, and so I wanted to say thank you more than anything. I don't like apologising too much, but I just wanted to say thank you, because yeah, I really, really appreciate it. So with that said, let's get on with what we have in front of us here, which is the main topic of the video. So this book, as you can see, is called God's War by Christopher Tyerman, a new history of the Crusades. So let's talk a little bit first of all about the Crusades and what they were, what they symbolised, I guess, and you know, a little bit about the period of history. So actually, let's read the contents first. Okay. So we have illustrations, list of maps, acknowledgements, so all the stuff you have in books normally, and then the First Crusade, the origins of Christian Holy War, the summons to Jerusalem, the march to Constantinople, the road to the Holy. I still don't know how to say this word. Sepulchre. So the Crusades are a period of history where there were conflicts and battles fought in the name of religion. That's what the crux of this all is. Battles that were sponsored in many ways and had direct involvement from, in other cases, the Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Empire. Originally, as you can see here, talking about Jerusalem, the Crusades were a campaign, I guess, sponsored by the Holy Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Empire, to take back what they saw as taking back the Holy Land of Jerusalem from Islamic rule. The Crusades took place between, I think it's 1095 and 1291. It's generally considered to be the period of time that the Crusades were fought over, and so obviously a long period of time, nearly 200 years. The conflict was not ongoing throughout all of those years. You know, there were periods of time in between the Crusades that there was no direct fighting going on, but it's generally considered to have lasted over that period of 200 years at the start of the first millennium, or I guess the second millennium. It would technically be AD. So there are other conflicts around the world that I believe are considered in principle to be crusades. I think there was some conflicts in the Iberian Peninsula, so that's Portugal and Spain, as well as some campaigns in, I believe, Scandinavia and the northern Slavic countries, as well as places like Bosnia. And I think the what am I trying to say? The thread that links all of these together so that they can be considered crusades is that sponsorship from the church, in terms of a conflict fought about religion by or with the Catholic Church. But I believe that some of these campaigns in the Iberian Peninsula and elsewhere have been seen or have been recognised to be different or have different names over, by historiographers. Is that the right word? Historians, historiographers. I don't know. I think one of those is right. By European, the people who study history in Europe. So, yeah, as you can see here, we have the Third Crusade, Fourth Crusade, the expansion of crusading, Fifth Crusade, Eastern Crusades in the later Middle Ages, so maybe that's what I was talking about just then. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll read a few pages. I will read a few pages, and then there are some I want page, I think it's 27 I want. There are some pages with, there we go, some illustrations. Some of you may have seen them. I did a little YouTube short where I talked about some of these illustrations in this book, so you'll notice there's some lines here. I got this book, I've currently borrowed this book from a library, so I guess these are where people have been making notes. But yeah, anyway, let's have a little read. So, the origins of Christian holy war. On the 12th of April 1096, a young Castellan, a card of Montmerle, pledged property to the great Burgundian monastery of Cluny in return for 2,000 lions, shillings, and 4 mules, so that he could accomplish his intention to join the journey to Jerusalem to fight for God against pagans and Saracens. In a similar deal with the Abbey of St. Victor at Marseille, 4 months later, the brothers Geoffrey and Guy, or I guess maybe it's, if it's France, maybe it's Guy in Marseille, were reported as wishing to seek Jerusalem, both for the grace of pilgrimage and under the protection of God, to exterminate the wickedness and unrestrained rage of the pagans, by which innumerable Christians have already been oppressed, made captive and killed. I'll follow along with my finger. The experience of that campaign, which cost Acard his life near Jaffa in June 1099, convinced his companions that they were the army of God, fighting for Christ, their casualties martyrs, their cause supported in battle by the saints of heaven themselves, George, Demetrius, and Blaise, knights of Christ, their success assured because God fights for us. They were no more than pursuing the task given them by Urban II, who was a Roman emperor, I believe, or I guess maybe it was the Pope. Maybe this was the Pope. I don't maybe it wasn't the emperor by this time. I think maybe this was the Pope. On his preaching tour of 1095 to 6, who, in his own words to the Flemish in December 1095, hearing that the Turks had in their frenzy invaded and ravaged the churches of God in the east and seized the holy city, had at Clermont imposed on them the obligation to undertake such a military enterprise for the remission of all their sins. 50 years later, in an account of the Second Crusade, an Anglo-Norman priest called Raoul aired a general theory of justified homicide. He is not cruel who slays the cruel. He who puts the wicked men to death is a servant of the Lord, because they are wicked, and there is ground for killing them. By this time, such redefinition of Christian militancy raised few eyebrows. Some years before, the austere and massively influential Bernard, abbot of Clairvaux, a sort of one-man moral I've no idea what that word is, ombudsman, I've no idea, and one of the instigators of the Second Crusade, 1146 to 48, voiced his approval at the union of the militia of God and the militia of the world in the creation of the military order of the Knights Templar. So this is, I guess, where the Knights Templar came from, potentially, where we see this perception of, knights with red and white crosses and the metal helmets and things like that. I just wanted to go back to that point about when they talked about what was it? Let's have a look. It was justified homicide, yeah. So I think this is something that we see throughout history, is people wanting to give a justified reason to be able to kill, to be able to take another life, to feel like their cause is justified, and this just so happened to be through their faith, through believing that it was, in some way, I guess, God's will that these people had to die in the name of, Christianity and all of that sort of thing. And we see it throughout history, I think there's some principles there that can apply to the reason why things like the Holocaust were allowed to happen. These reasons, given by the Nazi regime, that the Jewish peoples were somehow less than human, therefore their killing was not an act of murder, but an act of killing a lesser being. I think it's the same, maybe not the same, but it's a similar sort of principle in that sense, because I think ultimately a lot of these people probably would not have wanted to kill other people. I know it's a completely different era, and killing was far more common in terms of killing in militarized, battles. So yeah, I think often we find these reasons that people give themselves as justification for committing terrible crimes. So where were we? Just got some smaller writing here. The knight who puts the breastplate of faith on his soul in the same way as he puts a breastplate of iron on his body is truly intrepid and safe from everything. So forward in safety, knights, and with undaunted souls drive off the enemies of the cross of Christ. So again, it's this whole idea of, you are, I guess, annulled from your sin of murder, as it is in the name of the church and all of this sort of thing. So yeah, it's trying to attach a greater meaning to this act of murder, I guess. Bernard, in his recruiting, preaching, and letters for the Second Crusade in 1146-7, showed intimate knowledge of the New Testament, not least the epistles of St. Paul. The apostle was fond of martial metaphors, but his message was wholly contrary to the abbot of Clairvaux. Put on the whole armour of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against the flesh and blood. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, taking the shield of faith, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Or more succinctly, no man that warreth for God entangleth himself with the affairs of this world. So that's going even further, I guess, to suggest that, apologies. That's going further to suggest that, you can sort of detach yourself in some way from the mortal, not the mortal plane, but certainly the mortal sphere of, I guess, reality, by imbuing yourself with this spirit of Christ in some way. So yeah, it's, I never like to pass judgment about these things, but you can see that this is very much a real way of justification. Once again, I think it's a way to escape some of the moral magnitude of murder, by trying to sort of detach the meaning of the act by, associating it with this higher, this feeling of higher purpose and things like that. So yeah, and so that was that sentence. And for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. It is a measure of the pragmatism, sophistication, some may say sophistry, and sheer intellectual ingenuity of St. Paul's successors over the following millennium in expounding the doctrine of the Gospels, that there was an ideology of Christian holy war at all. So yeah, certainly my understanding of the teachings of God and Christianity are, they're not violent, they're not, it very much talks about murder being not the right thing to do and things like that. So it's very interesting. I guess it's like a dichotomy or a juxtaposition or something like that, where it's to say that this murder and these acts are done in the name of Christ, when in theory the teachings of that faith, would tend to disagree with that statement, is very, I will say, interesting. And I guess it speaks to the charisma of these people who were giving out the call to arms, getting so many to fight for this cause, with this, I guess, contradiction in place, is an incredible testament to their charisma and their ability to rally people. So I think that's a very interesting, I guess, way of looking at this as well. Let me just nip back to the contents. Page 58 is what we want. Page 58. And yeah, if any of you guys watching are in any way, I guess, fluent in this subject area, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. because I think it's there's some very interesting concepts at play here, and I'd love to get to know what you guys think, and also obviously what you think of the video. So yeah, let me know. So the sermon preached by Pope, so there we go, it is the Pope. I struggle to believe it's Urban. Is it Urban? Urban the second, outside the cathedral at Clermont, which I believe is in France, in the Auvergne on Tuesday, the 27th of November, 1095, has been seen as setting in train one of the most renowned sequence of events in the history of Western Europe and Christianity. The story has resonated down the centuries of how tens of thousands willingly uprooted themselves for the sake of liberating Jerusalem, a place of unimaginable physical remoteness, yet ubiquitous immediate appeal, of how, suffering horrific losses and agonizing obstacles, they were painfully forged into an army that appeared to campaign as much in a war of the spirit as of the flesh. So that really very eloquently puts into words, far better than I could ever do, what I was sort of saying, is that this perception of a greater purpose goes a long way to inspiring the peoples of those armies to fight harder. You know, people are always going to fight harder when they feel like they have a just cause, and it allows them not just to fight harder but to fight for longer. And you know, if these people have come from Western Europe and they're going all the way to Jerusalem, I mean, that's a long way nowadays, but think about, you know, back in the 11th century, how slow transport was, how many months that would take to do. So it's a huge, I've seen the word used that it was seen as in some ways a pilgrimage. The Crusades were seen in some ways as a pilgrimage, which is interesting, I guess, an interesting way to look at it. Certainly probably would have been sold that way to the people who were going. So yeah, where are we? Fortune to an army that, yes, of how they surmounted seemingly fatal odds of climate, terrain, local hostility, and superior enemy numbers in repeated desperate battles and skirmishes, and of how, after 3 years on the road, the survivors stormed the holy city. 3 years on the road, wow. The survivors stormed the holy city, reclaiming it for Christendom. As one awed observer marked, 460 years after it lost to Islam, under the Emperor Heraclius, if the response to Urban's appeal astonished, awed, and shocked some, the outcome provided its own justification, creating a legend to feed the imaginations of Western Europeans, to stir their emotions and haunt their nightmares. And that's another interesting point about how, in achieving their goal, that then gives a huge amount of impetus for future generations to go and do the same. If their ancestors have achieved it, then why can't they? And they should, to uphold, the honour of their faith and their ancestors. So yeah, that's a huge factor as well. Had this First Crusade not been successful, I don't think it's naive to assume that there potentially would not have even been another one. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well. Okay, we've been reading for quite a long time. That was what I wanted. That's very convenient, actually. That's exactly what I wanted to find. So as you can see, we have a map here. The Mediterranean Sea is this bit here. The Byzantine Empire, the Black Sea. We've got Hungary, England up here, and as you can see down here, where is it? It's down here. Jerusalem, all the way down here. So you think that people have come all the way from up here. They've gone on several routes, but they've come all the way across Europe, all the way through and into Asia, and down all the way here to Jerusalem. say what you will about the nature of the battle and the motivations and anything like that. That's not what we're here to talk about. That's an incredible feat of endurance, and that's, yeah, I do struggle to believe that's, that's even occurred, because that's crazy. So yeah, that's very very impressive, and I'll see if we can find any. So Belgrade, apologies once again. So Belgrade is Serbia. We've got Sofia, Bulgaria. We've got, where have we got? Constantinople here, so that's modern day Istanbul. Seljuks, so I believe the Seljuk Turks were the ones that held Jerusalem. So yeah, yeah, I mean, just completely crazy. Have we got anything else around here that we would recognise? I'm not so sure. Tripoli there. Aleppo, which is, I think it's Syria nowadays. Yeah, I mean, incredible. When you think about it, the sheer scale of the undertaking, given the time and how difficult that must have been. So here we have Jerusalem and its environs, the holy city in the eyes of the Western Christendom. So this is an illustration of Jerusalem, supposedly, and we can see, I think, some Christianized imagery, the cross, circle, the circle here. Yeah, it's very much an interpretation, certainly, a very Christianized interpretation of what Jerusalem looks like. And obviously, how are these people in Western Europe to know what Jerusalem looked like at all? Back in these days, it's very important to understand that even the most sophisticated scribes and scholars and things like that didn't have the greatest means by which to express what they see and things like that. So Urban consecrating the high altar at Cluny during his preaching tour of France. So that's what we just heard about. Pope Urban II going on this tour and inspiring the masses to take up arms and go to Jerusalem. Someone, Peter the Hermit, leading Crusaders there. Saladin, a contemporary Arab view. So I guess this is what the Western Europeans considered to be, I guess, a typical Arabian person would look like. Yeah. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, idealised in later medieval Western imagination. That's important, idealised imagination. I think it's all about perception, and certainly about believing what you see, or do you believe what you see, or do you be skeptical of this? But I think at the time there was a much smaller level of skepticism and cynicism, certainly surrounding institutions like the church, who held incredible power over society and the world as a whole. Religion held such a firm grip on what was considered to be life back then. So yeah, that's very interesting. of the Psalter of Queen Melisende of Jerusalem in the 12th century. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. So I think with that, we are going to call it a day. I think we've definitely talked about some interesting topics today, and I'd love to know your opinions on some of them. If you would like me to do another video with this book, then let me know, because I will have to return it and then borrow it again, because I have to return it tomorrow to the library. But do let me know, because I would be more than happy to lend it out again and do another video on this book. So please let me know, and let me know whether you enjoyed. So with that said, thank you ever so much for watching. I really appreciate you if you've stuck around this long. Thank you for being patient with me. I hope to be back on a more regular basis going forward. Thank you ever so much. I love you all.